Alberto Simeoni, and I am the account manager for the CEN-CENELEC technical boards. So I will give you some highlights on the European Standardization System. Hopefully, I hope that these concepts are already familiar with you. So we'll go very quickly on who are the actors of the European Standardization System, what is our portfolio, why we work also at international level, and what is the legislative framework where we move. So the actors, I'm sure that you know that who are the European standards body. Can you tell me how many ISOs, European Standard Organization, we have in Europe? Please don't be shy here in the room. 3. Which one? Correct. CEN-CENELEC ETSI. So 3 ISOs. We are de facto monopolistic bodies at European level. ETSI is the standard body for telecommunication. CENELEC is the standard body for electric and electrotechnology, and CEN covers all the other domains. They are based in Brussels, CEN and CENELEC, and the staff is merged. So the people you can see here is the people serving CEN and CENELEC. We are around 85 people. You know, CEN and CENELEC in total produce 1,500 standards, 600 depends on the year, so more than 120, 130 standards per month. And of course, this is thanks to the model, not of course to us. We are only 85 people. The model is that we, via the national standard body and national committees, we manage the expertise at the European level, and then we can finalize the text in a standard. And then, of course, you can see in the here in the slide that the national standard bodies are key. In CENELEC, they are called national committees. In ETSI, they are called national standard organizations. So you will have 3 different acronyms for the members of CEN-CENELEC ETSI. For you to know that the regulation 1025 from 2012 called them national standard bodies, NSB. So with the acronym NSBs are covered also the CENELEC NSCs and the ETSI NSOs. We are distinct, so the staff of CEN and CENELEC has been merged, but CEN and CENELEC are 2 different legal entities. So we have 2 different CEN and CENELEC technical boards, CEN and CENELEC General Assemblies board, and of course the same for ETSI. And then at international level, there is the same structure. So ISO covers basically what CEN covers. IC is the international body covering electric and electrotechnical sector, and ITU is the international body covering telecommunication. We are a private organization, so we develop European standards, which is our main product, but we are also recognized within Regulation 1025 as the 3 only European standards body. It means that in Europe, only CEN-CENELEC ETSI can develop European standards. All other specifications that are not drafted by CEN-CENELEC ETSI in Europe cannot be called standards. Also, the international standard body are recognized in Regulation 1025. So international standards within the EU legislative framework are only those standards delivered by ISO, IC, and ITU, and national standards are delivered by the national standard bodies that are also mentioned in Regulation 1025. These are the definitions within Regulation 1025. So you can see that our name is black and white. You see on the left it's the definition of European Standards Organization. I don't know if you can see that CEN-CENELEC, ETSI are mentioned under Annex 1, and the annex can be changed differently from the text of the regulation. So this is a heads up for CEN-CENELEC ETSI to be careful, to continue delivering what is expected by the European Commission. And on the right, you see definition number 9 is about the 3 international standards body, ISO, IC, ITU. Instead, they are not mentioned in an annex, but in the text of the standard itself. Okay, who are the actors in the European standard system? Well, you have a big responsibility representing the national standard bodies and the international committees, because our system is based on the national delegation principle, meaning that basically the expertise comes from the national level. So it is up to you to bring the market needs via the national experts in the technical committees. And at the national level, of course, you have business, you have industries, also SMEs, but then you can have national authorities, professionals, academia. There is a wide range of stakeholders that can be interested in standardization at the national level. And of course, they may have an interest also to participate at European level. But then you will also, in your position of technical body officers, you'll also be confronted with different bodies that participate directly in the European layer. So they don't come via the national delegation principle, but they participate directly in CEN-CENELEC, and these are the partner organizations with CEN-CENELEC. They have a specific agreement, and basically they are big European associations, and they can have either a very horizontal, a wide interest in standardization, also at policy level. So, for instance, there is one of our partners is Orgalim, and there is and they have a wide interest both in the mechanics, electro technical sector, machinery, and therefore they want to have a status of European partner organizations, meaning that they can also participate in the technical board. Or you can have a very sectorial European organization that have a specific interest to participate in a specific technical committee. In this case, we call them liaison organization. And then very important for the inclusiveness of our system are the Annex 3 organizations. Basically, Regulation 2025 has identified some weak categories of stakeholders that have issue to participate and be represented at the national level, and therefore the Commission is willing to fund a European association representing them in the European standardization. They are called the Annex 3 organizations. Basically, are 3 European associations representing SMEs, consumers, environmental interest, and also social interest, where social interest means basically the workers' right interest. So they are linked to the trade unions. So these 4 categories of stakeholders can participate wherever they wish. It is really clearly in Regulation 2025, and you will have a session after my session where you will be explained on their rights and what is also from your side as TBOs, all what you have to do in order to facilitate their participation. So market needs, but also policy needs, and they can also arrive from the European layer, of course, via our relationship with the European Commission, with which we have a special partnership. As I said, we are monopolistic in Europe, and we have a privileged partnership with the European Commission. And of course, there is a formalized way to exchange with the Commission. I will explain later. All what I said is in CEN-CENELEC Guide 25, so please consider this guide, take a look, because there are very clear duties and rights and duties for the organizations, but also for from our side. Okay, so I mentioned that I am the manager for the management of the technical boards, where Cinzia, in her capacity of the standards director, is the formal secretary. Here we have also a colleague of mine, Joella, who is working mainly for the CEN-BT, but of course she also deals with the CENELEC BT. So who are the technical boards and why are they important for you as TBOs? They are the decision-making body on technical matters. So all what comes on technical at technical level, the technical boards will have a final say. So they are composed of basically representatives from every single NSB&C. Basically, when we organize the technical board, it is a kind of let's say general assembly, with a difference that in the room we have the members of the NSB for the technical board. The chair is the CEN Vice President Technical for the CEN-BT. The CENELEC Vice President Technical is the chair of the CENELEC BT. Then we have as observer the 4 Annex 3, so those 4 organizations representing the weak stakeholders in standardization. You will see here in the slide ANEC representing consumers, ECOS representing environmental interest, SBS representing SMEs, and ETUC representing the workers' rights. And then we have the European partners organization, as explained before, so business, big European associations interested in standardization, and also the European Commission is an observer participating regularly to the meeting of the BTs. There are 2 ways of working. Every week on Wednesday, there is what we call the weekly dispatch. So I'm sure that in your organization, there is a channel for you as TBOs to receive information regarding decision of the technical boards every week. And then and then meetings are for CEN. In CEN, we have 2 CEN-BT meetings that are organized in coincidence of the 2 CENELEC BT meetings so that we can have a common session. And then we have 2 others meeting in CEN under the configuration of TCMG. So they are supposed to be more technical, so to solve technical matters. So in total, in CEN, there are 4 meetings during the year where decisions can be taken. In CENELEC, in addition to the 2 CENELEC BT meetings, in coincidence of the 2 CEN-BT where there is the common sessions, there is also 1 single CENELEC BT meetings. So what are the main responsibilities? The technical board advises and decides on technical matters, on everything. So organization, procedures, coordinations, they ensure no overlaps between technical bodies of the same organization, between technical bodies of CEN and CENELEC. Then they examine and decides on new projects. The CEN side here, you know that in CEN, the decision on new work item is a delegated decision to technical committees. In any case, the final responsibilities still lie on the technical board. For you to know that in CENELEC, maybe in 2023, we will go towards a delegation of the work items from the technical boards to the technical bodies. But this is something that is in progress. So at the moment, it is still up to the technical bodies to approve new work, to propose new work items, and to the CENELEC technical board to approve new work items, and the same goes for the work items under CEN and CENELEC joint technical committees. And in general, the technical board works with the management by exception principle. So what does it mean? I put here some example. And this is based on the most common cases that we encounter during our Wednesday meeting before the dispatch. For instance, if there are technical changes after vote identified within a technical committees to prevent defective standards, then you need a BIT decision in order to correct the standard after formal vote. Or you may request a second tolerance for when drafting the standards at national level, knowing that the first tolerance, for the first tolerance, there is no need of any CEN or CENELEC BT technical board decision. And then also very often we see that the technical bodies look for the approval of the launch of a second formal vote, because maybe the number of comments and the disagreement during the vote did not reach consensus, so the technical committee leadership decide to go for a second formal vote. Or we have many cases of the need to modify the annexes to the standard, the Annex Z, which are those annexes containing the normative references and the table with the correspondence between the clause of legislation and the clause of the standard, following a negative assessment from the HS consultant after formal vote. Or also as a final consequence of this impossibility to find a positive assessment of the consultant of the Commission, the final decision to remove the links to legislation, which is something that in a way, let's say, it is painful for our system, because of course we are interested to have those standards requested by the Commission in order to be cited and to provide presumption of conformity to business to be finally positively assessed and then cited in the official journal. And these examples are linked to the harmonized standards, as I explained. A recent case of the BT decision, and I invite you to be aware and to read carefully, is the new guidance for additional national elements. So providing some rules, some obligations, and rules for the national standard bodies when adopting European standard. Okay, what is our portfolio made of? Do you know what are the main deliverables? Can you name the main deliverables? Oh, of course, I know that you know, because you are part of the, so you cannot speak as being CCMC, please. Yeah, so for those online, standards, technical reports, technical specification, still two missing. One is specific for CENELEC. CENELEC people, what is missing? Christian, you cannot say anything. But you shouldn't say that. So HD, harmonized document for CENELEC, and one still missing. Very good. So the CEN or CENELEC Workshop Agreement, the CWA. So this is the list of documents that we deliver, and we produce this document via the work within the technical committees. So they're published as CEN-CENELEC document, but then they are implemented at national level by your organization, and also the sale of this document is part of the revenues of your organization. Maybe you have heard that ISO produce ISO standards, and ISO can sell standards. CEN and CENELEC produce the EN and all these other portfolio, but we cannot sell this document, and the sale is a very important revenue for your organization at the national level. Okay, main difference, let's start with European Standard, which is our most important product, and this is a technical document that prescribes technical requirements to be fulfilled by product, process, service, or system, and the main characteristic of our standard is the voluntary use. This is really what differentiate standards that are de facto used everywhere in business from the technical rules that instead are documents that are mandatory and of course are delivered by organizations that are not private organizations. So we are private, and of course our documents must be voluntary. They are developed with involvement of all interested parties, because our system at the national level, European, international level, must be transparent, open, and based on consensus. Standards, of course, are for common and repeated use. If you work on a prototype, you don't need to standardize a prototype. And they can be called standards only if approved by a recognized standard body. So this goes back to the first slide I presented. Only standard produced by the 3 ISOs at European level, the 3 international standard body at international level, and by the organization at national level can be called standards within the European framework. Why? Because we have in place procedures so that we can ensure openness, transparency, and the consensus-based process. And the standards are de facto the deliverable that are used in the European legislation. They are published in 3 official languages. That's why in the process of the standards development, you will see every time there is a formal vote associated to the drafting process, there is always the need to translate the standard into English, French, or German. Must be identically implemented at national level so that we have only one standard in 34 countries, because you know that the membership of CEN-CENELEC goes beyond the 27 of the European Union, plus the 2 of non-UE, but still belonging to the European area, economic area, meaning Norway and Iceland. And also we include UK, Turkey, Serbia, North Macedonia, and Switzerland, of course. When a European standard, when the work item is created of a brand new European standard, since that moment, the standstill applies at the national level, meaning that the national standard body cannot anymore start producing standards within the same scope of the brand new European standard. They are reviewed every 5 years. They can be confirmed. So we can have standards that have been published more than 5 years ago, but it means that they've been confirmed every 5 years. And European standards are the deliverables that are mostly referred by legislation in order to give the presumption of conformity to the products under European directives. So basically, an harmonized standard, I am sure that you're familiar with the harmonized standard. Harmonized standards are a subset of the European standards. In particular, are those European standards that have been formally requested by the European Commission for the application of union harmonization legislation, which clearly identifies the European standards as a document requested by the Commission in order then to be cited to give the presumption of conformity. The difference in the process for the harmonized standards is that there is the intervention of I would say a new element not participating in the normal standards drafting, which is the consultant that has been tasked by the European Commission to assess that the draft standard is the text of the draft standard is still compliant with the objectives of the legislation that it is intended to support. And of course, you may have heard that we have several disruptions in the last years, and you heard by the Director General this morning that a task force has been set up last year in order to have a high-level discussion with the European Commission in order to solve the matters, technical matters, and also policy matters, preventing in the last years the smooth citation of our standards in official journal. I have a request I would just ask to keep all the questions for the end, and then we will have a Q&A session. Then we have a technical specification. It's basically a quasi standard. It's a pre-standard, so still a normative document, still containing requirements, but for which the level of consensus is not enough to ensure the same status of a standard. The inquiry is not mandatory. There can be an inquiry, but it's not mandatory. It is rarely used to support legislation, but we have seen, especially in the recent years, more and more a request by the Commission to develop at least these pre-standards to support the legislation, and it is to be announced and made available at national level, but there is no need for standstill. So when there is a CEN or CENELEC technical standards, technical specifications that is created, there is no need to have a standstill at the national level, which means that the national standard bodies can draft national documents within the same scope. Of course, if the TS will be one day transformed into AEN, then in that case, the standstill applies and the national standards must be withdrawn. In any case, it cannot conflict with the existing European standards, and as I said, can be switched into European standard at a later stage. And the review is every 3 years. Technical report is an informative document, so normally do not contain any requirements, and that's why it is not really used. It's not a document requested by the European Commission when they issue standards request to us. It is basically to provide content of standards work. For instance, can be a technical report to summarize data from a survey or laboratory test. Do not contain requirements. There is a simple adoption, a simple majority adoption, and there is no time limit for its lifetime. And then we arrive to the different animals, which is the CEN-CENELEC or CENELEC workshop agreement. And this is completely different from all the other deliverables, because it is not developed within a technical committee. It is developed within a so-called workshop where there is direct participation of the interested organizations. So basically, you as TBOs, let's say, officers within a technical committees, you're not affected by the workshop that developed the CWA. So there is no delegation principle, but direct participation directly to the workshop. And any company can participate in this workshop, also outside Europe. So this marks another difference with technical bodies, published in one language only. As all the other deliverables, it is voluntary in the application, and there is no obligation to be implemented at national level, but it is enough to be listed in the national catalogs. And of course, also this can be solved by the national standard bodies. In any case, it has been conceived as a first step within European standardization. So also to attract business towards standards. So hopefully the CWA will be then transformed into a national standard. This table summarizes the main difference between deliverables. I hope this will be interested for you. And then I will just show you this graph to show you how we cooperate with our international counterparts, because there will be a specific session on the Vienna Agreement, which is the agreement between CEN and ISO, and the Frankfurt Agreement, which is the agreement between CENELEC and IC. It is important to state for you that the national standard bodies are members of CEN and then are members also of ISO. The national committees are members of CENELEC and are also members of IC. CEN and CENELEC do not represent the members, the national members in ISO and IC. So the participation in the international bodies is directly from your organization to ISO, from organization to IC. You will have an extensive session on this. So I can go fast because I already mentioned in my presentation Regulation 1025 from 2012, which consolidate the cooperation, successful cooperation we have since the 80s. So do not think that we start to cooperate with the European Commission only in 2012, but it goes back to the 80s. And basically, we develop standards to support the European legislation. Can be the European directives or European regulations. You know, directives is something that must be transposed in the national legislation by the national authorities, while the regulation is of direct application everywhere in Europe. And this is just a non exhaustive list of sectors where we have cooperation with the Commission. Here I add also a link to the page where you will see all the full list of legislation. The way the legislative framework is identified is called NLF. So you may hear this acronym, New Legislative Framework. Where basically the role of standardization is to develop voluntary standards that can help the implementation of European legislation, where the essential requirements that are mandatory are defined in the legislation, and where standards are a tool in order for the business to comply with those essential requirements. The main users of the standards, of the harmonized standards we develop, are de facto the manufacturers of products that are covered by legislation. But of course, the stakeholders are wider. You can imagine that since there is a legislation on toys, and therefore there are essential requirements for toys, we develop standards, and of course consumers have a very important role to play, and that's why at European level we welcome the participation of ANEC, for instance, and that's why also you at national level you should welcome the participation of any national association of consumers. In a nutshell, this is how it works, the relationship with the European Commission. You will go deeper in this with my colleagues. So basically, the European Commission issues a standardization request, which is a legal act, asking the three ISOs, or one of the three ISOs, or two of the three ISOs, to develop standards to cover a specific legislation. Of course, we always double check what exists at international level, because there is international primacy of standardization. We don't want to develop two standards, one for Europe and one for the international stage, if an international standard is available or can be made available. And then if we accept the standard request, which is one of the prerogatives of the technical board, because the technical boards take the final decision whether to accept or not the standard request, then the technical committee will start working and will deliver the standard that will be assessed by the HS consultant. Hopefully, we are trying to solve the main non-compliance, and then can be finally cited in the official journal and can give the presumption of conformity to the relevant business. More or less, we have more than 3,000 standards cited in the official journal. So you see, it is still an important part of our business. Here, Regulation 2025 is very important because it provides provisions to us regarding transparency of what we do, the wide stakeholder participation, in particular of those organizations representing weak stakeholders, as I mentioned, the important activity that must be undertaken at the national level for the SMEs, Article 6, and then Article 8 is about the annual Union Work Program, which is the planning tool of the Commission, where basically the Commission tries to set priorities for the hereafter for standardization. And this is something where we will pay more and more attention in the next years, because we understood the Commission is really trying to make a strategic document out of it. It was not really the case in the past. And the US TBOs, you will be consulted in the consultation process of this document, because the Commission consult the ISOs and other stakeholders in the drafting process of the IUWP. And then Article 10 is the most important, is about the standards request and also how standards can be cited in the official journal. To recap on the main principles, if you develop harmonized standards, you must always have a valid standards request. They were formerly known as mandates. There are still some mandates that are valid, so we can still offer standards under those mandates. Then a crucial element is the assessment by the consultant, external consultant of the compliance. In particular, we have to pay attention that the annexes are well drafted in our standards, because they are the most common reason for non-compliance. Eventually, the citation in the official journal is always a responsibility of the European Commission. And here you can find a list of standards that are published in the official journal. And this is the last slide. It is important that you are aware that since 2018, end of 2018, the Commission changed the way they publish the reference to harmonized standards, and this also made the system more, I would say, legalistic, and that's where also we start to have some issues. In the past, they were published in the C series of the official journal, so it was the communications section of the official journal, while now they are in the L series, so the legal part, which means that they undergo the full process, the full scrutiny of the legal service of the European Commission, and therefore they must be, I would say, perfect from a formal point of view. Okay, let's start taking